When they first announced that Invincible Season 3 was coming out and they gave us that schedule for how it was going to release, I was astonished to hear they were going to do a 3-episode premiere. That's so many episodes. It's just a lot to watch. But then I watched episode 3, and that episode was a doozy. Needless to say, I understand now why they premiered with 3 episodes. And I've seen things. So let's discuss those things here. Hello everyone, it's me, Amanda. You also might know me as Vamp. I am here to discuss with you Invincible Season 3, Episodes 1 through 3. That's 1, 2, and 3. I have watched all 3. It took me a minute because when this first came out, I was actually in London, I think still, or I was on my way back, and I just watched the 3rd episode, and I have so many thoughts. So many thoughts. I'm so excited that Invincible's back and that it's as good as ever. And if you can't tell, I'm a bit of an Invincible fan, if you couldn't tell from the cosplay. Okay, where to begin? I guess let me just give you a quick little synopsis on sort of these 3 episodes and what they go through, and then we'll talk about my thoughts on just sort of what's happening, what I'm loving, and, you know, just where I'm at overall with these 3 episodes. The first episode, we pick back up with Mark, kind of where we left off. He is training with Cecil, and they're preparing for the Viltrumite threat that is going to appear after his last fight, which did not go well in Season 2. So we get some of that. We also kind of get a check-in with the Guardians and see where they're at. Everybody's back together. We find out that, you know, Duplicate survived, which I believe we found that out actually in Season 2, but the rest of the team gets to find that out. And we also see that, yeah, everyone's back together. Everyone's okay. Rexplode has a new hand, and everyone is now at peak health. So the Guardians are back together again. Oh, it's so nice. Also, Oliver is getting older, and it turns out that his powers have manifested. So Mark and Debbie are also dealing with that in terms of the Grayson family home angle. And back in space, we also find out that Nolan is still in prison and has not yet agreed to join Alan the alien's resistance against the Viltrumites, but Alan is trying to wear him down. Episode 2 kind of picks up where we leave off with episode 1, which is after a fight against Doc Seismic in episode 1, Mark follows Cecil into this white room and is confronting him because he finds out that he recruited Darkwing 2 and is also using these human combination robot android things that were created by D.A. Sinclair, who is the mad scientist who captured William's boyfriend Rick and in essence turned him into one of these creatures against his will. And so Mark is not pleased. He is not pleased to find out that that's what's happening, and he decides to confront Cecil and make him try to confess to everyone else what he's actually doing, and condemns his actions to employ mad scientists and murderers. They have a big fight. Cecil basically does not agree with his opinion. We also get Cecil's origin story and find out a little bit of why Cecil is the way he is, with a story from his past, which I quite enjoyed. And in the end, in episode 2, the fight sort of culminates with Mark getting full-on attacked by Cecil, worrying that he might die because he's just being bombarded, and we find out that they basically put an earpiece in his brain that they can use to emit a sonic frequency that really hurts Mark because that is his weakness, and he ends up leaving Cecil and saying that he's no longer going to work for him, he'll never work for him again, and threatens his life ultimately, saying that if he comes near him or his family, then it's not going to be good for Cecil. He will kill him. Cecil likewise threatens Mark, saying that if Mark ever tries to come for him, I mean, not that he'll kill him, but basically they're both threatening to kill each other. That's kind of where we leave off there. Leaving a huge mess, as this is a fight that spills into the Guardians' headquarters, and the Guardians of the Globe are kind of have different opinions on it. So they end up actually splitting off. And then in episode 3, we're kind of more dealing with Mark having to now train his younger brother whose powers have manifested, and Oliver wants to do a suit that's based off of Omni-Man because he's Omni-Man's son, and Mark has to try to explain to him that Omni-Man isn't really seen as being a good guy anymore because of a lot of stuff that happened on Earth. So we're dealing with Oliver, who just wants to be a hero, and Mark trying to tell him to wait, and Oliver never waits. And in the end, that results in Oliver going up against the Mauler twins to help Mark and killing them, which is pretty traumatic, especially because, you know, he's a kid. So, yeah. That's what the red was for at the beginning of episode 3, and it got me. Through all of this, Mark also ends up confessing his feelings for Eve, and they decide to begin a relationship, which is another huge plot point, I would say. But that's basically the first 3 episodes. So that's basically what we got going on. So how did I feel about this? I mean, there's a lot that is happening here that I really enjoyed. I think my favorite thing about Invincible is that it's always a show where I feel like I really never know what's going to happen. And even though I have a pretty good familiarity with the comics, I haven't read every single issue, but I've read some key issues, and I have sort of gone through a lot of the comic book story. I do want to sit down and read it all eventually, but I'm kind of waiting for the show to be done, and then I'm going to go back and really like fine-tooth comb, read everything. The thing that I love is in that story, and even in the show, even if you're familiar with the comic, I feel like there's so much that happens that you just feel anxiety. This is just something I talk about in general. I don't know if it was in relation to Kraven, but probably it was because I didn't like that very much. Stakes. I'm talking about stakes, okay? So something that I just feel like we never really have in a lot of superhero media lately anymore is stakes. And I would say other than Invincible and The Boys, you know, there's a lot of properties that no longer can necessarily make me feel that real threat. And I'm not saying that that's all the time. I'm just saying there's been a lot of projects that have existed that are superhero based in that genre that have felt, yeah, kind of empty. But when it comes to Invincible, I'm always on the edge of my seat when we have a fight, especially if it's a fight that involves Oliver, because I just feel like, probably also because he's a younger character, so I'm like worried for him. I'm worried for Mark when he's there because that's his bro. But also just in general, I think every fight I really don't know how it's going to go. And also because this is a show that, while it is inspired by the comics and does follow a lot of the stuff in the comics, it kind of has its own approach to it. So there are things that are changed here. And I'm always excited to see how big those changes will be. So that is something that I've really enjoyed so far about the show, that I feel like it's doing really well. Every fight that happens, I'm nervous. The fight with Doc Seismic, I was like, oh my goodness. The fight that we had with the Mauler twins, that was an experience. Everything that also even happened with Multi-Paul, who ends up attacking Rex and Mark, more specifically Rex, because Paul believes that Rex is the reason that his sister Kate died, but it turns out that she faked her death, obviously, to just get some alone time. And Rex almost dies in that fight. Speaking of Rex, I feel like something that they're doing that's really good as well in this season is they're just really building up Rex to go through these changes. This kind of started in season 2, which I really liked, but it feels like Rex is just becoming a better guy, a better man. I just feel like we're really setting him up to be a character that it's gonna maybe hurt us if something bad happens to him. I know some things from the comics. It's hard because I never really know when I talk about Invincible how much I should talk about the comics, because I don't want to spoil things for people. But all I'll say is that I feel like Rex is going through this amazing shift, and I can kind of see, based on the comics, where I feel like we're building to with him. But at the same time, I don't really know how it's gonna go, and I love watching the character evolution. There's a lot of great characters in this show that I enjoy watching. I mean, I would also say that Mark has gone through such an evolution since the beginning of the show, especially with his relationship to superheroics, his family, his emotional maturity, and it's really interesting seeing him now mentoring Oliver, and just the differences between his approach to it, to his dad's approach, approach, but also his frustrations with dealing with someone that's so powerful and doesn't listen because Oliver doesn't have the emotional maturity yet. And also the revelation that Oliver really is his dad's son. He really kind of sees the world very similar to how Nolan does, which is a conflict for Mark, who, you know, I think is really more Debbie's son. But at the end of the day, Oliver still loves Debbie. And Debbie is another character that I just love. I love watching her journey. I love watching the grief that she went through in season 2 with the loss of Nolan and just kind of having to accept moving forward with her life and now dating Paul. And even though I know where Debbie's story goes too, and I still really ship Debbie and Paul. I really like them together, and I can't wait to see how much we get to explore that relationship with them, because I think it's really cute, honestly. I really like it. So Eve has some great stuff as well. I mean, Eve is trying to find herself. I love that she's going back to school. I love that she gets to reconnect with Amber. I love seeing her relationship evolve with Mark. And I think some of the writing actually around the romance between them is just so well done. It's so sweet and so sincere. Something that I've always really appreciated about Invincible is the way that it approaches relationships between characters. I mean, you know me, I'm a big X-Men fan, okay? I love X-Men. But X-Men is very much a soap opera, especially in the comics, and especially even in the animated show. I felt like they made it very soap opera-ish in a way that is really fun and that still has relatable elements to it, don't get me wrong. But the thing that I really love about Invincible is it just feels like these are people. And even the way that they approach like Oliver having powers being so young, I feel like he really does behave like how a kid would. And it shows you the danger of someone that young having that much power without really having the emotional maturity to handle that power. But this also extends as well just to how we approach relationships, whether they be family relationships, like Eve's relationship with her parents, Adam and Betsy, who, man, I just feel like her relationship with her dad, I feel like Eve also kind of went back to school, not because, well, I mean, because of her dad, yeah, and I think there's a part of her that just wants approval from her parents. I love that she got to stand up for herself in episode 3, but I just feel so bad for Eve because she has parents that love her but just really judge her for who she is. So I'm hoping that we get some closure, but I also know that Adam is always a butt, and I will say that as someone that has also started playing the Adam Eve game, where he's also just a butt. Adam, why are you such a butt? And it also extends, of course, to romantic relationships. And I love that there are so many different romantic relationships that we also get in the show, whether we're talking about Mark and Eve, or whether we're talking about Monster Girl and Robot, or whether we're talking about Debbie and Paul. Like, there's so many different kinds of relationships, and the approach that we get feels real. And it makes you really care about characters because it allows you to relate to them a lot more easily, because you can see struggles that you've experienced being explored in a way that feels real and true. And that is what I love about the show. It's got stakes, and there's a lot of honesty in this show. So it's been just such a fun journey to continue on. There are many things that I want more of too. I love when we got some of Cecil's backstory. I really want some more Rexplode backstory. I was hoping for some of that in the game. Haven't really gotten that yet. I was hoping for some of that. We got the Adam Eve special. Didn't really get it there. I would love to see more of Bulletproof's origin, which I know more from the comics, and just how it gets explored and how it differs, if it differs. And I can't wait to see just some more of these villains. I mean, episode 3, I mean, major spoilers coming for the end of episode 3, but when Mark in the sort of mid-credits scene sees the bot, and I was like, it's Levy, isn't it? It's gonna be Angstrom. And it was. And I was like, oh, he's coming back. But I love also the slow burns of stuff that we're building. Like, there's stuff that we saw in season 2 that I thought we were just gonna be jumping right into, and we haven't gotten into it yet. It's just, the pacing is, I think, really good. And I love that it's not afraid to take its time with stories and just build things. Create those strong blocks and trust that the story is good enough to keep people interested so that we can put those blocks in place and then later get these really big payoffs. So I'm excited that it's back. I just feel like it has such staying power. I'm glad that we're not gonna have a mid-season break, which I did feel like disrupted the flow of season 2 a bit. The costumes also look great. I love that we're doing the costume changes. I love how the title card has been changing, where it almost feels like with episode 1, it was Mark trying to fit that mold and then realizing that he's like being used. And that's what the glitch is about. And then he goes to the black and blue. And then we go full black and blue with episode 2. And then in episode 3, we go to red, which obviously is relating to what happens with Oliver in the episode. I just love the title cards and just guessing like, whoa, what's that going to mean every time something changes? That's really fun, I think. And I can't wait to see how the show continues to deviate from the comics and how it also continues to adapt and interpret the comic into the show. It follows it, but it isn't afraid to refine things or even change things, like how Amber is now with Kyle, not Gary. And so I don't know if Kyle is going to be like Gary, who she dates in the comics, or what will happen with that. But I am curious to see where it goes and how the show interprets that particular relationship. I won't say anything else because I don't want to spoil anything. But if you guys do want me to spoil more things with Invincible, let me know down in the comments. Let me know what you're thinking of the first 3 episodes. I really loved them. I hope you loved them as well. Are you excited for Invincible to be back? Did you even know it was back? I've been talking to some people that didn't even know, and so now people are like, oh, I guess I gotta go watch that. What happens with the marketing campaign with this show, guys? Sometimes I feel like that no one is aware that it's still going on. Are you a fan of Invincible? I feel like a lot of the times also when I wear this costume, there are multiple people that have said that this costume made them think of someone completely different than the characters that I'm actually cosplaying. And there are a lot of people that also don't even know who I am sometimes when I'm in this costume, unless I'm at Comic-Con, which I might have to bring this one back to Comic-Con if I go this year, because I feel like it's going to be a really good year for Invincible. And Comic-Con is a place where everyone recognizes every costume, no matter how niche your costume might be. If you have a niche cosplay, people will probably get it right at that con, because there's just so many amazing mega nerds. All right, that's what I got for this one. I've already talked too long. Let me give you my overall rating for this. So my overall rating, I would say for episode 1, I would give that a solid 8 out of 10. For episode 2, I would say, yeah, another 8 out of 10. And I feel like for episode 3, that was a 10 out of 10 for me. I really liked episode 3. I thought it was really good. So we're off to a very solid start, friends. Very, very solid start. It's building up nicely. I see why they wanted to get to that episode 3. Also, if we ever go back to this military base again, if we ever go in this coffee room again, I'm going to be like, I'm just going to be full of anxiety. I was already anxious when we returned to it. And I thought something bad's about to happen. And then it did. And if we go back, I don't want to know. Anyone that goes in that room, they should just close that coffee room, that break room. Get rid of it in that military base. It's cursed. Lightning can strike the same place twice. Actually, FYI. Anyways, I have trauma, but that's all right. That is Invincible for you. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. I'll see you next time, friends. And until then, stay nerdy. Bye! And if you want to check out other Invincible stuff, right here, look at it. It's there. You could click it. Do it. You should check it out.